the actual fatality rate, accident rate has remained pretty consistent throughout the last 20 years or so. And that's even with these new innovations of the halos and the return to.
Welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast, the podcast that helps aircraft owners and aviation businesses learn and understand the complex world of aviation insurance and risk management. From the basic principles of aviation insurance to risk management techniques and updates on the aviation insurance market, the Aviation Insurance Podcast is your guide to traverse the world of aviation insurance. Now, here's your host, Tim Bonnell.
Well, welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast, and today I'm excited about this episode. I'm bringing a longtime a partner in this business, this industry. Been working with this guest for, pushing a quarter of a century, I think. And so he's doing something a little bit new in the last year and can kind of bring to you, our audience, kind of a little bit different angle on a part of the aviation insurance market. So today I'm extremely proud to welcome Ernest DeSpain of Eiger Insurance Services to the show. So Ernest, it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Tim, thanks. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Yeah. So we talked about, the 20, almost 25 years I've been working with you. So what's the journey that led you to today as you're now the co-executive owner at Eiger Insurance Services?
Yeah. So, going back almost 30 years ago, I graduated from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. My hopes at that time of going to the school was to become a airline pilot like everyone else, but the timing in the mid 90s when I graduated was not a very good time for pilots. And so I just happened to fall into an opportunity to be an adjuster and an investigator for claims with a law firm in Los Angeles, Kernan Woolley. That led me to the claims that we handled was for W. Brown and Associates. So it led me to meet them and to get to know them. And it spent 5 years as an adjuster in the claims department. At about 99, I joined W. Brown Associates as an underwriter, became senior vice president there, and spent 22 and a half years on the underwriting side. Then in 2020, W. Brown Associate was acquired by Sampo International. It was a good opportunity for the company. However, I just didn't feel it was a personal fit for myself. And so I decided to leave along with one other, Ken Schmidt, who him and I then formed our own company, Eiger Insurance Services. And so and that's what brought us here today.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, anyone that listens to our show, anytime I bring on, an aviation insurance industry leader like yourself, I love to know, what you're most excited about as you look at, the aviation insurance market today or what's coming in the near future. So what would that be for you?
I think right now that our industry has a great group of individuals and people that are involved with it. I look at the Aviation Insurance Association and how it's grown and developed, the people that are involved with it. I served on the board for a number of years myself. And I just think that we have great people in the industry. I think it's the structure of the industry is such that there's room for some new players like ourselves with potential growth. I think that all the companies are going to be faced with kind of some changes coming up with the electric aircraft coming out. We just saw that they got a certification from the FAA for 135 operations in electric aircraft. And I think that's going to be new for the insurance companies and is something that we're going to have to kind of wrap our arms around and make some changes to how maybe even our policy wordings in order to adapt to these changes in the industry. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, a lot of innovation in a way that really hasn't happened. For many years, we've just kind of stretched airplanes and put different engines on them and new avionics, and now we're seeing completely new vehicles. So it's definitely an exciting time. So, on the other end, what are some of your biggest concerns or challenges you think we face as the aviation insurance industry?
Especially, because we're focused in the general aviation. Um, if you look, even with the innovations that have gone on, the actual fatality rate, accident rate has remained pretty consistent throughout the last 20 years or so. And that's even with these new innovations of the halos and the return to airport systems. We don't see much change going on in the percentage of number of fatality losses that are occurring. I think that's one thing that the industry has to continue to face is, although with the airlines, we've gone decades now of no major losses, but with general aviation, there hasn't been that significant kind of change. And, as an insurance industry, as the cost of these aircraft continuing to go up, as the value of individuals, so what we charge, what we expect for a liability payout, continue to go up, we're faced with this. One, can we either create more safety in the industry to bring the loss rate down, or are we going to be faced with there's more expenses because of the value of the aircraft, the higher exposure to individuals as an individual's net worth in these aircraft?
Yeah, there's no doubt that values rise. We've talked about the liability limits rising, claims, everything's rising, and so obviously, the accident rate needs to go down, the claims losses needs to go down, or it's going to be a continual challenge for either getting the premiums up or making other adjustments to keep the insurance from skyrocketing, so to speak. Because at the end of the day, the premium needs to pay for the claims for the most part, and sure, there's investment income, but that kind of comes and goes, and
Yep.
it can't be relied upon. So, one of the interesting things, I think most people, of course, when they think about insurance, if they're new to the buying an airplane or to the, insurance world, is that, aviation insurance works a little bit different than buying your home or auto. But when a lot of people hear the word insurance company, they just think an insurance company. But, certainly in aviation, an insurance company to the average person really is coming in different terms, right? The person that they're talking to may work for a different entity. Now, there are some organizations that work for the actual insurance company's brand, right? Or they're the aviation managers of, XYZ Insurance. There's some people that they're an insurance company that's formed up of a pool of insurers, so a pooling company. And then you have what some people call a managing general agent or a managing general underwriter that is creating a program that facilitates, coverage and places the policies with an insurance company who's putting their paper forward. That's without getting into reinsurance and everything else. But, Ernest, you come from this background on the managing general agent or managing general underwriting side. And so can you explain to our audience, just what that is and if there's any difference between that the agent or underwriter when we're talking about a managing general agent?
Sure. When it comes to the terms managing general agent or managing general underwriter, they're very similar in the nature of their structures. However, there tends to be one distinct difference. With a managing general agency, typically, not only do they take the responsibility of underwriting the risk, collecting the premiums, doing the issuing of the policies, but they usually also have the claims authority to then administer and adjudicate any of the claims that come through.
Huh.
MGUs uh, set themselves a little bit different in the fact that they just focus on the underwriting side. So they operate all the up to the point of the claims. They issue the paper, they do all the quoting and the rating and the issuing of the policies, the collection of the premiums. But then when a claims happens, there's usually another third party that's involved. And that's how we are structured. And with ours, we in our contract, we had a great influence over who actually we contract with for our claims. And that happens to be McLaren's as our claims administrator.
Yeah. And so, just looking, I talked about different, the different ways insurance companies kind of appear in the market. Why are MGAs or MGUs important to the aviation insurance market?
Yeah, so it helps add capacity because there are several big insurance companies that would like to possibly participate in the insurance industry to offer insurance policies. However, it's quite expensive for an insurance company to get set up, hire the underwriters, hire the aviation team, make sure that they have the right people. It can be quite a task to do so. So it's quite easy for them to find a MGU or an MGA who already has all those things that are in place. They have the infrastructure for it. They have the relationships. They are able to then develop the business quicker in a very short period of time than for an insurance company to try to break into the industry and create that themselves. And there's a lot. It's in addition to the speed to the market, it's also expense. To take on that kind of payroll and that kind of structure inside your organization, especially for a large company, it's actually more cost effective for them to use an MGU or MGA to that already has that structure in place for them.
Yeah, and oftentimes, in my experience, it seems that the MGA, the MGU will come in and kind of look into more niche areas of the market. They'll look to write some of the type of risks not everyone else will. They're looking to kind of to create opportunity or to create solutions where there's opportunity. Is that kind of your perspective as well?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about being as an MGU is you tend to have more. You're able to kind of look, adapt, and change quicker than a large company itself because you are looking for those niche areas. You're looking for areas to be filled. You like to make it completely rounded out with the vanilla type risk too, but you look for more opportunities, and we're just more. Uh, we tend to run more lean, so that allows us to change directions very easily of where we want to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, the insurance companies is the company whose name is on the paper, right?
Correct.
And so they get their underwriting and claims handled in different ways. And so even for a company like AIG, who and others, Star, who participate in the aviation insurance market, they have a specific, aviation unit, often called the aviation managers, who manage those risks. And sometimes, let's say even though it's an AIG policy, or written policy, they own different insurance companies. The paper title, we call it the paper, and so it may be an AIG policy, but say the National Fire and Company, of
Right.
Pennsylvania or something like
Yep.
that. And so the term insurance company is often misunderstood. And a lot of times, like they'll say, which company are you with? And so it's typically the underwriting company they refer to. I'm with Eiger, AIG, Star, or, whereas USAIG and Global Aerospace, they're the pooling companies. So they manage a portfolio. They manage the whole thing, but then they have insurance companies that go together to share the risk. And that's ultimately, how, aviation insurance companies can mitigate the catastrophic nature of aviation is by sharing risk. And so, you as an MGA, you obviously went out and found, a paper that you felt would be good. And you guys also had to put together a reinsurance program, right, to buy the back end coverage to spread that risk to multiple insurers. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, that's very accurate. Just in the way we came to market, we actually kind of did things a little backwards. So we actually, before we found a company, we actually went to the reinsurance market first
Hmm.
and marketed ourselves, Eiger, to them and said, look, we'd like to have the backing of a program so that when we went to find a company, even though they're the ones who ultimately buy the reinsurance and they're the ones who decide on what reinsurance to buy, we basically brought them a package done deal of saying, look, this is turnkey. Here's the reinsurance program already in place that can be put in place for this program. And so we did that first. We did all of our reinsurance work first, then went and looked for a market.
Yeah, and it probably made it a lot easier to do so, having
It did.
the
Yeah.
reinsurance in place. So I kind of wanted to outline because I just know there's a lot of misconception about, well, who's the insurance company, who's the underwriter. And so you bring this unique perspective of understanding the differences in those structures. I kind of outlined some of the differences. Are there any other, anything about being an MGA, MGU versus a traditional insurance company that I really didn't highlight in there? Or is it just kind of depends on the claims handling and structure
Yeah,
or otherwise?
it's again each MGU. it's about the individuals within it and their structure of, and who they have handling claims. As you know, a lot of our business is actually relationship driven. So it's having those right people in the right place. So you can talk to your underwriter. MGAs and MGUs tend to have a little bit more flexibility in certain regards, and so it does give an advantage for a producer that has a particular need for a client, can approach an underwriter at an MGU who may have more flexibility to say, yes, we can do this, no, we can't, or this is a way we can find a solution for it. They're just able to do that without so many restrictions that might be placed by a large insurance company,
Yeah. So it's good to have varying the types and degrees, and there's more than one way to establish it. But I just think that's helpful for people to understand the difference in what an insurance company is, what the underwriting program is, and that they're all necessary and they have distinct advantages. And so I just think that's a unique perspective not everybody has. So you've obviously been in a leadership position for many years in this industry and on the MGU side, and so I always love to see we've talked about these losses, we've talked about these increasing values. So are there any safety initiatives or technologies that you're most excited about right now that you think will have a positive impact on the industry and safety?
I do like some of these new aircraft that are coming out that do have this, safe return to airport, the sophisticated avionics. I think these are great systems, and I hope that actually they can continue to develop to where that they're affordable to actually start pushing down into being adapted into older aircraft. I think that's a great thing. And, something that underwriters have always preached, and I think we will continue to do so, is recurrent training. And I think that no matter if it's your 172 or if it's a Gulfstream, the doing recurrent training is important. And I think it just prepares that pilot for when something does happen, that it prevents it from being a catastrophic type accident or loss, that they able to manage the situation.
Absolutely. And I know, as an MGU, you've always been a part of programs flexible with that training. What are your insights on, if you care to go into this topic, because it can be a hot button, but, some carriers are simulator only, some it depends, from your perspective on the recurrent training. Obviously, any of it's good, but what's your perspective on the in-aircraft versus simulator training?
All sorts of training now all has its place. There's certain aircraft that you just cannot find the right simulator for it. In aircraft is very appropriate. There's a time and place for doing in aircraft or simulator based training, but then that is also has its own issues because it is a simulator. There's nothing compared to being actually in the aircraft and doing your training. So you have to find those balances. Do underwriters or even the pilots or the owners and the operators want to do engine cutoffs and emergency procedures in their aircraft? No, probably want to do that in a simulator. Let the simulator take the punishment of it, And then, but do you want to go do your instrument approaches, your standard operations in the aircraft? Yes, because there's no other place where you'll have that same cockpit as in your own aircraft.
Absolutely. I mean, as a pilot and having done both types of training, I obviously advocate for both. There are just certain failures and emergencies that you just can't replicate in the aircraft because of the reasons you mentioned. And so being in the sim, it really trains you to look for potential errors and things that are realistic. But at the same time, it's hard to beat, those aircraft operations, real IFR that you get in the aircraft. So, I'm always a proponent of both, and I think both definitely have their place. And so, for any aircraft that has that option, it's, I know it's time and money, and there's a challenge, in this day and age of getting time slots or, getting booked into simulators. But I know you guys, as long as there's a date and people are trying, you guys are working with pilots and insureds, all of our insurance companies to try to to extend the requirements to what's work, understanding that that's a challenge. So, but yeah, recurrent training is always good, and there's definitely a host of technologies, coming, and as always, you see things entered. We talked about the airlines earlier, and their good safety record, and it kind of makes its way into corporate pretty quick. But then it's kind of the legacy aircraft and things that typically are the last to bring on these safety initiatives, and because it's expensive, and sometimes the avionics cost more than the aircraft, so that's always a challenge. And just flying is great, but certainly I agree with you that the need to improve safety and reduce accidents, prevent deaths is definitely a target for everyone involved,
Yep.
and the insurance company as well. So good stuff. Are there any other improvements or adjustments you feel the aviation insurance industry, but not just the airplane operators, right, but the insurance industry needs to make in the near, immediate, or somewhat near the foreseeable horizon to continue to sustain?
I think just again going back to some of the innovations that are coming out and the changes with aircraft. Again, seeing electric aircraft come into the marketplace and actually being used in the aviation industry. I think that the insurance companies are going to have to adapt to these changes coming up. The same things that are in the policy forms may not apply, and we need to somewhat be ahead of the aircraft coming out and making sure that we have the insurance policies that are correct for the exposures.
Yeah, and I think that's how the aviation industry has operated from the beginning. There's new types of risks, and so we try to innovate and adapt to that. And it's always good to have that attitude, an innovative attitude on the insurance side to go along with the innovative attitude on the on the manufacturers and the various industries, because that's how things move forward. But obviously in insurance, you're putting a lot of money on it, and so you need to do the things to try to cover your basis, and paying for bringing in a premium to pay for the claims without being so cost preventative it doesn't happen. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
even talking about technology, even in our industry, we're looking at some technology to bring in just to help us to provide more service and stuff. And some of the technology that's coming out computer wise, even using AI smart systems, is quite amazing, and, looking forward to bringing some of that actually into our operation in our company.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and certainly brokers and MGAs and insurers alike all have to kind of start working together. I know the Aviation Insurance Association, we have some initiatives to try to improve some digital communications. So no competitive advantage stuff, just saying, when we're all going to say something's a Cessna 172 or something, what does that mean? Is it a Cessna 172B, R? Is it a Cessna Skyhawk 172? There's surprisingly, a dozen ways to say a Cessna 172, and we all say it different. And to help us all communicate, we've got to decide what those things are going to be. But there are a lot of software, opportunities that don't, they certainly allow, you at Eiger to be competitive, and us at Aris to be competitive. And it's an exciting time from that perspective. I agree. And I don't know about you, but you definitely have to, consider those investments to remain easier to work with and competitive in the market. So it's exciting to hear, a leader like yourself talk about those things, because it definitely is necessary to help us best serve, ultimately our customers and everyone else involved. So,
Yep.
All right. Well, just looking at the time, are there kind of any other questions I probably should have asked you about aviation insurance or MGUs, or do you just have any other closing thoughts?
No, I think you covered it well. But, again, I thank you for the opportunity to come on your podcast, and appreciate all the things that Eris does and you personally do to bring education to our industry. You've done a lot of writing of books and things like that I think have been very helpful to educate people that are coming into the aviation insurance industry.
Ernest, I really appreciate it, and I'm just excited to be able to learn from you today. We haven't ever really talked about MGAs and MGUs, and so I was excited to have you to bring that to our audience, and frankly, plenty in the industry who don't even quite understand that. So more than one way to write an insurance policy, and the MGU, MGA is just another one. So, Ernest, it's always been a pleasure working with you my entire career, and as each of us have made a couple small changes here and there, it's we've always continued to support one another. So it's always great to be able to visit with you, and certainly to share your story and some of your insights with our audience today. So thank you for taking your time to be here on the Aviation Insurance Podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's all for this episode. Join us again next time as we continue navigating the waypoints in aviation insurance. Until then, enjoy clear skies and unlimited visibility.
Thanks for listening to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. If you found this episode of value, please share it with someone who would benefit from this information. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss any new episodes, and to help our show have more impact. This episode is brought to you by Aris Insurance Solutions, your flight plan for navigating the turbulence of aviation insurance. For more information, visit arisinsurance.com. That is www.aerisinsurance.com. Disclaimer: these episodes are for educational purposes only, and due to the changing regulatory and legal nature of the business, some information may change over time. Having a well-educated and experienced aviation insurance broker on your team is an absolute requirement to success in business and for managing your aircraft and aviation business risks.